It's 5 p.m. across India and live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We'll get you top stories from India and the region. I'm Tanvi Taneja. And for other important news from the world, I'm joined by my colleague in Washington, D.C., Simon Marks. Simon, such a pleasure to have you.
Hi Tanvi, it's 7:30 in the morning here in Washington, D.C., 4:30 in the morning in California. There's a big storm heading this way from California, already pouring with rain here. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, here in the US, there is fresh pressure on the Biden administration to break with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu after killings and devastation in one of Gaza's main hospitals. And media reports here indicate that after numerous investigations, the US government believes American diplomats were targeted in Cuba by Russia using sonic weapons. Those are some of the headlines from this side of the world. Now for the way things look from Delhi, Tanvi, back to you.
Turkey sees historic opposition win in local elections. President Erdogan calls it a turning point. Istanbul Mayor Ekrem İmamoğlu solidifies position as Erdogan's main rival. Israel withdraws troops from Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital after a 2-week operation. Tel Aviv and Washington expected to discuss possible alternative proposals to the Rafah operation virtually today. India's Minister of External Affairs slams opposition parties for the 1974 transfer of Katchatheevu Island to Sri Lanka, says they gave away Indian fisherfolk's rights. And Islamabad High Court suspends the 14-year sentences of former Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi in the Toshakhana graft case, grants appeal of conviction. First news from Asia. In a major setback to Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the main opposition party has secured substantial victories in local elections, maintaining control over crucial cities in Turkey. The results showcase the Republican People's Party retaining its grip on key urban areas. Republican People's Party leader Ekrem İmamoğlu led by 10 percentage points in the mayoral race in Istanbul, Turkey's largest city. His party retained Ankara and gained 15 other mayoral seats nationwide, including Izmir, Bursa, Adana and the resort of Antalya.
The nation itself gives the order and the instructions, not just one person. Officials receive instruction from the nation. Period of one-man rule is over as of today. It is done. The republic and democracy to go full speed ahead from now on.
Today, the voters made a very important decision. The election results showed that the voters decided to establish a new politics in Turkey. The voters decided to change the 22-year-old picture of Turkey and open the door to a new political climate in our country.
So the election results of Turkey's local polls were a major setback for President Recep Tayyip Erdogan, since he had hoped to take back control of the cities soon after clinching a third term as president. For the first time in 21 years, Erdogan's AK party has faced a defeat at the ballot box across the country. President Erdogan said that the elections did not end as they hoped, but he sees it as a turning point, not an end.
March 31st is not an end for us, but a turning point. The Turkish nation has conveyed its message to population by using the ballot box in the March 31st municipal elections.
On to the Israel-Hamas conflict now. Efforts to broker a ceasefire continue in Egypt as Israel has withdrawn its troops from Gaza's biggest hospital, the Al-Shifa. My colleague Simon Marks is in Washington, D.C. He gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Simon, a ray of hope now as Israel and the U.S. are reviving talks on Rafah?
Hard to tell, I think, Tanvi. The Israeli army released footage on Monday showing strikes on Hamas targets in Gaza. The army said troops have exited the Al-Shifa hospital area after a 2-week operation during which they killed gunmen and seized weapons and intelligence documents. The two sides have stepped up negotiations mediated by Qatar and Egypt as ceasefire talks also resumed in Cairo on Sunday. Winston Peters, the Foreign Minister of New Zealand, met his Egyptian counterpart Sameh Shoukry during a visit to Cairo on Monday to discuss the ongoing conflict. So we cross live to DD India's Alex Kadier, who joins us from Tel Aviv. Alex, what has the reaction been in Israel and also in Gaza to the release of that fresh video from the Al-Shifa hospital? Well, we don't have Alex Kadier with us at the moment, so we'll move on to the next story and come back to him. Staying in Israel, thousands of Israelis blocked a major highway in Jerusalem on Sunday in the largest anti-government demonstration since the Israeli-Hamas conflict began in October of last year. Police were seen firing water cannon as protesters came together and called for Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's government to resign. The Israeli Prime Minister's cabinet has faced widespread criticism over security lapses during Hamas's attack on southern Israel, in which 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 taken hostage last October. Ukraine on Monday stated that Russia has used 5 hypersonic Zircon missiles to attack the capital Kyiv since the beginning of 2024. Kyiv's military administration claims Russia has launched 180 missiles and drones towards the Ukrainian capital in the first 3 months of this year. Russian President Vladimir Putin confirmed in his address on February the 29th that Russia had used Zircon missiles. They're part of a new generation of unrivaled arms systems. There was no immediate response to today's claims from Moscow. In the latest from Russia's concert hall massacre, sources say Iran may have tipped the Russian authorities off about the possibility of a major terrorist attack near Moscow last month. According to published reports, Tehran had shared information with Moscow about a possible terror strike inside Russia, and that particular information was acquired during an interrogation of those arrested in connection with Iran's twin bombing. However, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov on Monday denied that any Iranian warnings were provided to Moscow. So we return to our main story, the release of that footage regarding the latest strikes on the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza. And I'm joined now live from Tel Aviv by DD India's Alex Kadier. Alex, give us a sense, first of all, of the reaction both in Israel and also in Gaza to the imagery that has now been released by the Israeli authorities.
Well, Simon, we've seen those images of the area around and the hospital itself absolutely devastated by 2 weeks of fighting between Israeli forces and Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Of course, the reaction in Israel has been broadly supportive of the IDF's actions. They see it as a necessary evil that their forces are fighting Hamas in the area of the Al-Shifa hospital, but a lot of criticism of that decision to return to the Al-Shifa hospital. Of course, the first time it was raided by Israeli forces was back in November. They then said that they had managed to rid the hospital of all Hamas fighters, but now that they had returned, that's something that Hamas denies, but we have seen 2 weeks of brutal fighting, and the main buildings, the main surgery building, the intensive care unit of the hospital, as well as the emergency department, the general surgery department and orthopedics department buildings, all destroyed. And so it will be a long time before that a hospital can be operational again, Simon.
And Alex, does this footage specifically have any direct impact on the prospect for ongoing discussions about a possible ceasefire and the release of hostages and exchange of Palestinian prisoners held in Israel? Or is this just another incident that is not going to hamper those conversations?
Well, it will continue to increase the international pressure for a deal. There's no doubt about that. You cannot look at the footage of these destroyed hospital buildings and not feel like a ceasefire is now desperately needed, both to release those hostages and for humanitarian aid and medical aid to be able to enter Gaza. But it's very clear, at least from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at a press conference just yesterday, he said no international pressure would stop Israel from continuing with its military objective of completely destroying Hamas. That will make the negotiations particularly difficult. We know that one of the real sticking points has been Hamas's demand for a longer ceasefire and for the full withdrawal of Israeli troops from the Gaza Strip. And that, of course, is not something Israel can contend with. And their stated objective is the complete destruction of Hamas, the same group that they are negotiating these ceasefire talks with. So we know Israeli officials are in Cairo continuing these discussions, but still a very long road ahead before a deal can be reached. Simon.
Alex Cadier live for DD India in Tel Aviv. More from Alex later in the day here on DD India. Thanks very much indeed. Moving on to our next story, Taiwan's Navy chief is expected to visit the United States this week amidst China issuing fresh threats to the island. Tang Hua is expected to attend a military ceremony and discuss ways in which bilateral naval cooperation can be boosted between Taiwan and the United States. Last week, a US lawmaker visited Taiwan and reiterated the importance of continued strategic cooperation between the island and the USA. The United States is Taiwan's most important arms supplier and international supporter, despite the absence of formal diplomatic ties and an insistence by the Biden administration that it observes the One China policy. DD India's Patrick Falk has more from Singapore.
The US and Taiwan, we're told that Tang Hua will be in Hawaii first, where he will visit the home of the US Indo-Pacific Command before heading on to a conference near Washington on sea, air and space. We're also told that the Taiwanese side is trying to tee up talks with the head of US naval operations, Lisa Franchetti. But beyond that, it's difficult to say what precisely is on the agenda. Both sides have tried to keep this visit relatively low profile, as is always the case when it comes to Taiwanese officials heading to the US. The Taiwan Navy and the Pentagon have both declined to comment further on what the visit is about. But sources have said that this is also partly about bolstering efforts under the island defense line concept, which is basically about bringing together Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan and Borneo to counter China, particularly as Beijing is becoming increasingly assertive in the Indo-Pacific. And that would make sense when you consider that there is also this trilateral summit that's due to take place in April between Japan and the Philippines and the US as well. So in terms of timing, this does seem to make sense and works along those lines. But as to how China's reacted to this, well, as you can imagine, China isn't happy and is opposed to any formal visits by Taiwanese officials, and the Foreign Ministry has said that it is opposed to military collusion of any kind when it comes to Taiwan and the US.
Governor Wes Moore of the American state of Maryland on Sunday urged Republican lawmakers to work with Democrats to approve US government funding needed to rebuild the collapsed bridge in Baltimore and to get the city's vital port and its economy back on its feet. The Biden administration released $60 million in initial emergency aid on March the 28th to assist in cleaning up the debris and reopening the port. US government officials have told lawmakers in Maryland that the final cost of rebuilding the bridge could rise to at least $2 billion. Meanwhile, efforts are continuing to clean up thousands of tons of steel debris from the collapsed bridge. Equipment being used now includes 7 floating cranes, 10 tugboats, 9 barges, 8 salvage vessels and 5 Coast Guard boats. Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge collapsed last week, killing 6 road workers when a container ship lost power and crashed into the bridge's central support pylon. And that's it from me here in Washington, D.C. I'm going to spend the day dodging the rain. I hope the weather is better where you are back in Delhi. Tanvi?
Thank you. We hope so too. That was Simon Marks, my colleague, joining us all the way from Washington, D.C. Still to come on DD India Global. India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, turns 90. Prime Minister Narendra Modi says the transformation of Indian banking sector a case study. And Vietnam aims to protect its forests in 6 north-central provinces, for which it is taking help from the World Bank. All that and more on the other side.
As the cycle of accountability returns, the time has come when the biggest democracy chooses to write another chapter in its glorious history. Development, justice, regionalism, a big political canvas. Everything will be put to test in this mega battle for glory. DD India dissects what makes elections 2024 the battle royale in Indian politics. Data and analysis free from bias to help you understand why India matters. Great Indian Election on weekdays at 8:30 p.m. only on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Global. I'm Tanvi Taneja. Back to Asia. In relief for jailed former Pakistan Prime Minister Imran Khan and his wife, the Islamabad High Court on Monday granted him and his wife an appeal of their conviction for graft and suspended their 14-year jail sentence. Just a week ahead of February 8th elections, Imran Khan and his wife Bushra Bibi were both handed a 14-year sentence on charges of unlawfully selling state gifts. Khan remains in jail after multiple other sentences were imposed on the former cricket star ahead of national polls, which also disqualified him from holding any public office for 10 years. And India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi hit out at Tamil Nadu's ruling party, the DMK, for failing to safeguard the interests of the state. The Prime Minister said that new details show that the DMK's double standards on the Katchatheevu island issue are evident. He wrote on social media platform X, and I quote him here, rhetoric aside, the DMK has done nothing to safeguard Tamil Nadu's interests. New details emerging on the Katchatheevu have unmasked the DMK's double standards totally. Congress and the DMK are family units. They only care that their own sons and daughters rise. They don't care for anyone else. Their callousness on Katchatheevu has harmed the interests of our poor fishermen and fisherwomen in particular. India's External Affairs Minister and BJP leader Subramaniam Jaishankar also hit out at the Congress and the DMK for mishandling the Katchatheevu issue. Minister Jaishankar said that it is an issue that's been debated in the country's parliament and also in Tamil Nadu circles. He said that in the last 5 years, the Katchatheevu island and fisherfolk's issues have repeatedly been raised by various parties in parliament. He said that in the last 20 years, 6,184 Indian fisherfolk have been detained by Sri Lanka and 1,175 Indian fishing vessels were seized, detained or apprehended by Sri Lanka.
This is not an issue which has suddenly surfaced. This is a live issue. It is an issue which has been very much debated in parliament, in Tamil Nadu circles as well. It has been the subject of correspondence between the union government and the state government. Now, every political party in Tamil Nadu has taken a position on this. Two parties, the Congress and the DMK, have approached this matter as though they have no responsibility for it.
Minister Jaishankar's remarks on Katchatheevu Island drew a response from the Congress party. It said that the Indira Gandhi-Shrimavo Bandaranaike agreement was signed to save 600,000 Tamils at the time.
Government of India, headed by Mrs. Indira Gandhi ji, has signed an agreement called Indira Gandhi-Shrimavo Bandaranaike Agreement. In that time, to save 6 lakh Tamils. To save them, in return, this 6 Katchatheevu Islanders given by the government of India and to the Sri Lankan government. We are very clear that if fishermen are attacked and if our brothers and fishermen in Ramnath district are attacked, we will, India government, we will raise our voice to take back Katchatheevu.
And next we get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election in India. The Election Commission has strongly reprimanded Congress leader Supriya Srinath and BJP leader Dilip Ghosh for their statements and said that the Commission will not tolerate any such statements in future. The Commission also advised them to adhere to the Election Code of Conduct. Tamil Nadu BJP President and party's Coimbatore candidate K. Annamalai held a roadshow ahead of the Lok Sabha elections. Karnataka Congress Chief and Deputy Chief Minister D.K. Shivakumar campaigned for Soumya Reddy, the party's candidate from Bangalore South Lok Sabha seat. BJP's Manifesto Committee meeting was held on Monday under the chairmanship of Union Minister Rajnath Singh at the BJP headquarters in the national capital. Piyush Goyal, Ashwini Vaishnav and other party leaders attended the meeting. Former AAP MP from Punjab's Patiala, Dharamveer Gandhi, on Monday joined the Congress in the presence of senior party leaders. Dharamveer Gandhi is likely to contest as a Congress candidate from Patiala. So in the run-up to the general elections in India, shooting star Riya Rajeshwari has urged youngsters to exercise their vote in the parliamentary polls. DD India's Deepika Mehto had an exclusive conversation with her. Listen in.
Since we know that the 18th Lok Sabha elections are coming and they are around the corner, and the voters, especially the youth, play a key role, and you are the youth icon for many young shooting stars, many sports fans out there, what do you have to say to the first-time voters for the upcoming 18th Lok Sabha votes?
I love the line and the hashtag and the campaign that's been going on saying Mera Pehla Vote Desh Ke Liye. So please go out there and exercise your right to vote.
And also a quick question, last question from you on being fit, because the central government, it has been running a campaign called Fit India Movement. They've been emphasizing on many different initiatives also. Champions Speak is one of them, where the champions like you, they go out to the people and speak and, inculcate a sense of Fit India. What do you have to say about that?
I think it's a great movement. It's so nice to have that awareness, and it's so nice that the Prime Minister has brought it, like he's done it himself. And when he speaks about it, of course, the entire India listens. And it's so important to be fit. I mean, even sports is all about fitness. So each and every individual, like each and every child in schools, they are talking about it. Like everybody's talking about Hum Fit to India Fit, and like stuff like it's a great movement.
All right, moving on now. India's central bank, the Reserve Bank of India, RBI, entered its 90th year of monetary policy making and regulating banks on Monday. A ceremony marking 90 years of RBI was held in Mumbai. The event was attended by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman and RBI Governor Shaktikant Das. The Indian Prime Minister released a commemorative coin on the occasion. PM Modi congratulated everyone associated with the RBI for this milestone. He said that when India is heading for a centenary, the RBI has a significant role in making India a developed nation.
देश के बैंकिंग सेक्टर में उसके स्ट्रक्चर में क्या बदलाव जरूरी है, इस पर हमें सोचना होगा। इसमें हमें नए फाइनेंसिंग, ऑपरेटिंग एंड बिजनेस मॉडल्स की आवश्यकता हो सकती है। ग्लोबल चैंपियंस की क्रेडिट जरूरतों से लेकर रेहड़ी पटरी वालों तक की जरूरत को, कटिंग एज सेक्टर से लेकर ट्रेडिशनल सेक्टर तक की जरूरतों को हम पूरा कर सकें, ये विकसित भारत के लिए बहुत जरूरी है। विकसित भारत के बैंकिंग विजन के इस पूरे अध्ययन के लिए रिजर्व बैंक बहुत उपयुक्त संस्था है।
Vietnam aims to protect its forests in 6 north-central provinces for which it is taking help from the World Bank. The Asian country recently received $9.9 million from the World Bank, equating to 20% of the remaining amount from the Emissions Reduction Purchase Agreement for 2018 to 2024. The World Bank has previously disbursed $40 million, equivalent to 80% of the agreement. The Vietnam Forest Protection and Development Fund has already disbursed Phase 1 funds to localities and made payments to forest owners. This sets the stage for Vietnam to launch a carbon credit market in the near future. And next we take a look at other stories making news around the world. The Commander-in-Chief of the Thai Navy, Admiral Adung Pam Lam, is visiting India for talks with the Indian Navy Chief, Admiral R. Harikumar, on maritime cooperation between the two nations. He was accorded a ceremonial Tri-Service Guard of Honour in New Delhi today. He also paid homage to the fallen heroes at the National War Memorial in New Delhi. At least 5 people were killed and hundreds injured in India's West Bengal after a cyclone hit the city of Jalpaiguri. Several houses were damaged as strong winds uprooted trees and electric poles. Affected individuals have been shifted to safer locations and the authorities are on the ground for aid and relief work. The Indian Air Force on Monday carried out the first emergency landing and takeoff strip for fighter aircraft in Anantnag. The trial was conducted as part of bolstering Indian Air Force's emergency readiness to face any future exigency. Korean orchestra, the KBS Symphony, reached a monumental milestone with its 800th regular concert. The KBS Symphony Orchestra, the best in Korean classical music scene, made its debut in December 1956 by performing a symphony for the first time in Korea. The orchestra has been part of key moments in Korean history and travels across the globe as well. So with those symphonies, we wind up this edition of DD India Global. Do join us for another edition of the show at 7:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. You can connect with us on Facebook, X, formerly Twitter and Instagram. You can also find us online at ddindia.co.in. We will be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Tanvi Taneja from my entire team in New Delhi. Thank you for watching. Namaskar.